Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Thrive Pet Design. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made my own vivarium, a Mourning Gecko vivarium. I'm so excited to share this with you, so please keep watching to see how I create this. Okay, well first things first, I had to fit a background fit onto the tank. I think backgrounds are a really important part of any sort of scape because they really allow you to add more texture into what you can in just the hardscape. So that's why I really focused on that. I'm just using a coconut fiber sheet. And I'm going to be putting the tank where my old 5-gallon was that had Kai. Right now it just has some endlers. The choice to tear it down wasn't really that hard because I only set it up because Kai had stopped working in the community tank. And when he had passed away, it just kind of felt like it wasn't the same anymore, and I didn't want to get another betta, knowing that I am going to be graduating soon. And it just felt like it was kind of wrong timing, so I just decided to move the endlers into the palletarium, which made more sense because I already had endlers in there, and I'm just going to have to keep a population in check. So what I'm doing is I'm using a fish bag. I was thinking about using some sort of like cup thing, but I already had like a bunch of fish bags on hand. So I was like, I'll just float a fish bag because the water parameters are actually quite different between the two tanks. The pH is significantly lower in my palletarium because the pH of my water is naturally really high. Cocoa fiber is pH neutral, but my pH is really high, so it basically it lowers the pH to about 7 in that palletarium, while my normal water is about 8.2 upwards. Literally, it's quite high. So I wanted to float them. It also has more tannins, so I just made sure I floated them to ensure that they would be okay. And they have been doing great. I've had no casualties in any of them. There hasn't even been more aggression since I put them in here, so it's going really well. So when I released them into the tank, other fish decided to swim in. I don't know why they did that. But then they eventually all came out, and I removed the bag, and I moved all the plants and took all the snails out of the old 5-gallon as well. So here I am back with the aquarium. Basically what I'm doing is, you know how some people create egg crate fixtures? I decided to do that by drilling a bunch of holes into a plastic tote and just using some outdoor rock that I had. Most people use like leca or other substances, but honestly, I've created many terrariums. This is my first vivarium, but I've created many terrariums and I've seen that both of them have the same effect, and I haven't really seen a big difference besides the fact that the more porous clay balls sometimes serve a better purpose, but I have used both and it hasn't really affected it, and both have everything I've made that has leca or natural stones has worked the exact same, and you can even use pea pebbles from your local gardening center as well to the same effect. So here I am basically just trying to create a bit of a hardscape. I know that to some people this is pretty easy, but I knew I wanted to incorporate that piece of driftwood because ever since I'd had that driftwood. It was in every single tank of his, and I felt weird now that I didn't have him, and I wanted to put this piece of spiderwood into the setup. I was also trying to incorporate cerise stone at the same time, but later I realized that this just didn't go with the look I was trying to make. And I later realized that the shape also wasn't working because the piece was just too small to be a central focal point for the entire tank. So I later fixed it, but at the moment Scuttle did approve. I don't know if you can see him bobbing around. He was helping me from up top. It was very, very helpful. He butts his way into everything I do. He's just dancing on the lid. I also put some sphagnum moss as well into the bottom because I don't know if you know, but sphagnum moss can also be used sometimes as some sort of like drainage layer barrier, and I thought that I should have as many ways to prevent isopods and springtails from getting into the substrate into the drainage layer as possible. And ultimately I moved the spiderwood to the side like that, and that was the look I went with in the end. I think it looked really nice. I think it does also help with the type of drainage layer I used, how it had an elevated platform already. It really helped to elevate the look of the scape, and I really love it because it also was a way that I could introduce both the cork bark and the spiderwood. I knew I wanted to have a ton of naturalistic hides for the Mourning Geckos, so I really wanted to use a ton of cork bark, also because isopods love cork bark, and it was very important to me that the isopods were going to be safe as well. So this was the look I ended up going with. I used a ton of different pieces of cork bark, and here I am adding in the final piece of cork bark. It's a big tube, with a bit of a hole in the top, and I decided it would make sense to include it because then it could be like a feeding dish, and I'm going to use it as a feeding dish once I find something that fits into the hole or until I drill it bigger. But I think it will work as is as well if I can just find something that's the right size. I also purchased a manzanita branch because I think that it would incorporate the cork bark and the spiderwood together better, and I think it really did because it kind of moves through the entire scape and it almost reminds you of like a tree's root. It really was quite beautiful. It took me a while to find that right location, but once I figured out how to do it, I think it looks really nice. I think it really complements the scape, and it adds more depth as well with the smaller branches. And it also includes a small little vining type thing for the isopods to reach their food dish once attached to that cork bark round. I don't know if you can see it, but it does. And that was the look. That was the final look. I'm like out of breath after explaining that. It took me a long time, but I was so happy with it. And I finally got the lid I needed. Everything has been going so well with this tank. I really love the look of it. And the most nerve-wracking part was adding the substrate, because I was adding in... Basically what I decided to do is that I thought I will just move my powder orange isopod culture into the terrarium. So I was very delicately moving the powder orange isopods into this terrarium. As you can see them moving around. It went really well. I don't believe I experienced any casualties from the isopods. I didn't see any, and all of them are still doing well, and I have so many in that tank now. But it's so awesome. I figured out a way to prevent them from escaping. So it's been going really, really, really well. And they do better in pretty much any type of setup, so that's why it pretty much worked. And here are some of the initial plant choices after just adding in the substrate. I'm going with some type of peperomia. I have a wandering dude, inch plant, whatever you want to call it, and 2 different types of pothos. I have a marble queen and a golden pothos, I believe, but I could be wrong because I never got the name of that pothos. And I had to do a lot of the planting off camera because I forgot to film it. But I ended up adding in 2 tillandsia. I also added in a dracaena and a rosy maidenhair fern. I added in a purple passion. I added in so much, and I am so happy with how it looks. I am in love with this setup at the moment. But I think it's gonna really, really complement my room. I mean, it's stunning. I tried to add some ficus pumila in, but I don't know how long it's going to work or if it will ever adjust to the setup that I have, because the setup I have is definitely significantly less humid than a poison dart frog setup, which is where they were kept before I got them. But I will mist the tank with RODI water to prevent it from building up on the glass. As you can see, this setup is something I am so happy with. It's going to eventually house some mourning geckos, so I am so excited to do that. But for now, I'm just going to keep looking after the isopods. I still have to get a UVB light. I still have to buy their food. I wanted to get a humidity gauge just to keep control of that. But soon it will be happening. I'm very excited. It's going to be so fun. And thank you everyone so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, why not? It's very fun. It's very free. I respond to everyone. I love everyone so much that follows me. So please just consider subscribing, and I am really hoping that you will watch my journey as I go getting my first reptile. Thank you so much, and I hope you have an amazing day.